Okay, thanks for joining us this evening for where I am. Might be morning where you are or afternoon, just depending. Today we're going to go through our P6-Scrubber. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm the CEO of Emerald, and I'll be doing the intro and the closeout. And Sue Hopkins will be doing the demo, and she's joining us from Wyoming. So this latest version of P6 Scrubber has some nice new features that we're going to highlight so that you get an idea of the different possibilities for the tool. Now, as P6 users, one of our most common struggles is to how do we deploy P6 in a project environment where you might have people collaborating and contributing to the project from all over the world. More and more, that's the environment we find ourselves in. Engineering might be done in one country, manufacturing in another, construction in another, and maybe you've got module yards in another country. So we work in a worldwide project environment. So we end up oftentimes having to deal with importing XERs. And this is why we built P6-Scrubber. So although we try and encourage our clients to have a collaborative environment, shared environment, it's not always a possibility. So with importing XCRs, the fun of it all is you're never quite sure what you're going to be bringing in. So you could end up getting a lot of pollution in your P6 system, which is not good. It causes trouble possibly for your reporting. It could also, of course, cause a lot more maintenance and cleanup that you have to take care of. So all in all, it's not a great situation to be in. Some of our clients also have very specific contract expectations and specifications for what a schedule needs to look like. And they're trying to make sure contractors, engineering firms, suppliers are adhering to those. And they don't want to waste a lot of time dealing with stuff that wasn't expected. So that's another key reason why we built P6 Scrubber. And so we just want to take all those struggles with XCRs away. And that's, I think, what we've achieved quite successfully with this tool. So some of the key things that we're striving for is to get rid of that effort, make sure that that effort is gone. And I thought I'd maybe ask some of you how often you're dealing with, let me go ahead and start this poll. And if you can, go ahead and answer, and I'll just leave it up for a second. And if not, I'll pull it down in a minute. How do you deal with these P6 projects? So some of our clients end up having to have different databases where they bring those projects in, and then some of them clean it up in Spot, and other people open the XCRs and start manually editing them. So these are pretty common ones. Looks like most of the people here import them in place and clean them up. And we find all sorts of different things, different approaches. Okay. So what we're striving for is to take away that effort, because that effort, especially on certain kinds of projects, can be quite considerable. So maybe with that in mind, I'll ask the next question. I'll just do them back to back here. How much time do you actually spend dealing with cleanups? Now, this can vary considerably. I think it depends on how many projects you bring in. So one of our key clients, they bring in 50 or so projects every week to 2 weeks. It's a lot of cleanup. So if you don't do it that often, it could be less. So maybe only a few people voted on that, but it can be quite considerable. And that is the whole point to the P6 Scrubber tool. So let me run through conceptually how it works. And after I do that, we will turn it over to Sue, and she can run through and show you the tool in action. So the first thing is you have a schedule. Now, that is in an XCR format. It could be one or multiple projects, and the scrubber can do more than one project at a time. you have that schedule and there's things you don't want to bring in. So there's unwanted data. And there might be some data that you actually want to clean up. So it's not that it's wrong, but they might not have labeled it in exactly the same way that you have it in your database. So the scrubber will let you tackle both unwanted as well as data that you want to just tweak a little bit. So the way it's going to work is you can create a definition. That definition can be shared with a team or just for yourself. Okay, so there's different ways to tackle those definitions. The definition will be used against an XCR or more than one, and then you scrub the file. So it's pretty simple. And from that, we report back and we give you information. What's okay, so it fits or it matches. Um, and we also let you see with a report, and Sue will show this in detail, exactly what's going on. Okay, so what matched, what was changed, and what we just decided not to bring in whatsoever. And then you can take a look at that, make sure you're comfortable with it, and then you can go ahead and upload the file the scrub file into your P6. Now, in terms of what we can actually check, we check quite a bit of data. So user-defined fields at all the levels, codes at all the levels, cost accounts. We also look at calendars and resource dictionaries as well. So once you have your definition set up, you can bring your file in, you can run it, and that definition can be run on many XCRs. So it's not limited, like it's not married up to an XCR specifically. Now, we also deal with those POBS and risk type problems that have been kind of straggling around for different versions. I think in the latest version, Oracle has taken care of them, but not everyone's on the latest and greatest. So you may still be faced with those, and we clean those up as well. And then one final little piece is validation. So we allow some validations on IDs and naming conventions. Okay. So those are the main aspects. So I think we can turn it over to Sue, and she can run through some examples. So let me go ahead and hand it over. And you should be getting.
Okay, I've got
Okay.
it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen here so that you can see the P6-Scrubber in action, so to speak. So what you can see here is the login screen. And we have essentially two versions, if you will, of P6-Scrubber. We have a standalone version that you can run outside, completely independent of your P6 environment. However, in our latest release, we have the ability to hook up P6-Scrubber to your database so that you can get some really nice features based on what already exists in your database. So if you had more than one database that was hooked up to, you would select the database, and then you would go ahead and sign in to that database. Now, this is the main screen that you come into, and this is where essentially you are defining what you want to do with those pieces of information in these topics along the sides that also have subtopics underneath them. What you want to do with those pieces of information. So let's say, for instance, I go into my projects area here and I look at my codes. Now, right now, I don't have any definition actually applied here. I don't have anything open. So this is starting from scratch, essentially. So what I would do is decide, okay, do I want to do project code type and dictionary validation? If I do, I would enable this. And then I could start populating my information that I want to have. So if I already know what my code type name is, et cetera, I could start typing that in. I could decide, what do I want to do with this? I want to keep it. And then if I can take a look, now In this other column name where it has the new code type name, I can actually see if there is a match in my database. So I can start typing, and there I have it. I do have a match for this particular piece of information. Now, another thing I might want to do is then populate my dictionaries. Now, I could do a bulk add on this, which essentially pops up a window where I can copy and paste into P6 or into P6-Scrubber my values that I actually have available in P6. So I don't have to go out and find every single one of those values. I can actually go in and add them all here. Now, what's even easier is to build a definition from an XCR that you're actually going to want to scrub, that you're going to want to clean up. The way that I can do that, is that first of all, I'm going to say I want to basically start a new definition. So I'm going to start a new definition and tell it, yes, I want to abandon those changes. And then I'm going to go out and I'm going to say I want to import a file or files. So I'm going to work just with one XCR in this case, and I'm going to grab that XCR and I'm going to say import that data in these different topics that exist in this XCR. When it completes, it tells you what it is bringing in. And then I can go piece by piece and see what I've got here. So in my codes, I can see very easily, okay, I have my client that came in. I have that type of schedule that came in. However, I have this district that obviously has a problem because I have that warning on it. Now, what it's telling me here is that I have a dictionary validation that failed. So the code type is there. However, my dictionary value is not. So when I pop this open, I can go and take a look at my dictionary value. Let's say I know that I have districts out there, but I can't remember maybe what they are. So I can start typing and it's going to give me my values that already exist in P6. So what I can say is I want to remap that value and I want to call it D5 instead. And what that's going to do is now match my database and I won't be creating an additional value in my district project code. Now for my client type, I don't need to have this client type. I don't want to keep that. I actually want to remove it. So I'm going to scrub that piece out. And when I click away, you can see my X goes away because I've decided I'm going to remove it. And so it does not have to match anywhere, either in the dictionary or the code type. Now, I am still going to need to say what I want to enable and what I don't want to. And I have some extra little pieces that I can decide out here. I can decide if I save this definition and I bring in a different XCR that has any additional code types, I can decide, do I want to remove those extra code types? If they are not actually listed in my valid code types, I can actually tell P6-Scrubber to remove that if I end up having an extra code type come in. Now, the same I can do with my code values. I can say I'm going to allow in new values, or I could say, all right, I want to scrub those out. If I have anything other than what already exists in my database, then I want to scrub it. And so I want to remove that out. So you can pick and choose what comes in and what doesn't. Now, if I go up into the UDFs, these work similarly. So I would want to enable, of course, if I want to take a look at these. If I don't enable them, it's going to let everything come in. Now, in this case, I can see that I have my submitted file name. And if I hover over that line, it's telling me that I don't have a matching value that actually is in my database. So I really don't need this piece of information. I don't need this UDF. So I'm going to choose to scrub that out. And I've also have this submitted project ID. This isn't the same as what I use And so I can also choose to scrub it out, even though I already have that out in my database. It just means something different than what this particular XCR is going to populate. Um, in this case, I don't need any WBS codes coming in. So I can say I want to scrub that WBS code. Maybe I don't want any WBS codes coming in. I can select that subject area and tell P6-Scrubber, don't bring in any UDFs at the WBS level. Now I have one more that has an issue here, and of course it's not matching. Now I do use this date. However, this date is not named the same thing in my database. So if I go out here and I start typing, I can see, okay, I call it submitted date instead of submittal date. So I can go ahead and I can choose that. And now I can see very easily that it does match there into my database. Now, another thing that we've allowed for on both activities and projects is to validate or do a comparison to a particular pattern for an ID or a name. So let's say I have a contract and I have my contractor is sending in um, the XCRs, and I want to ensure that that project ID that they are sending in conforms with what I have said it needs to comply to. So what I can do is I can say I want to define a project ID pattern, and I'm going to build out a pattern. I can make it very simple. I can say it just needs to contain something. It can start with, end with, but I want to do a little bit more with a simple pattern. As I build my simple pattern, I click in here and I can say I need to have any letter. And there's going to be 2 letters that I'm looking for. And I want those letters to be uppercase. So then I can apply that. Now, not only do I need 2 letters, but I also need some numbers that follow this. And to be exact, I need 5 numbers that need to follow that particular, that need to follow those 2 letters. Then I should have a dash. So I can go in, I can say I need to have specific text. I can type that specific text in. In this case, it is a dash, and then I can apply it. Now, after that point, it really doesn't matter what comes in. I can have any number of different characters that follow, but I need those first pieces of information to match this particular pattern. So then I can say, now I want any character. And if I put a 0, it's going to say anything after that is fine. And so now I have it built out. Now I can easily test whether I've done this properly by testing my pattern. So right now I have nothing in here, so it does not match the pattern that I've defined. So if I go out and I actually put something in there, I can test very easily that what I have defined as my pattern is going to work with the rules that I've put out for in that contract. I can do that also for a project name. I can also do it on activity IDs and names. Now, something a little different, we know in codes at the activity level that we have several different levels. So we have global and we have project. Now, when it brought in my information from my XCR, it's actually showing me what I have. I have several project or global data activity codes, and I've got some issues with some of them. So if I come in and I look, I can see, oh, I have a dictionary validation that failed. So if I open this up and I take a look, I can see that, oh, I don't have an XX work type defined in my database, and I don't want it to be. Actually, what I want to do is take this XX and I want to remap it to something that's already there. And I'm going to select that. And then I'm going to go and make sure that my definition actually, or my description matches there. Then it's going to give me an OK. Now, ZZ, I don't recognize. and it's not something that I want to actually bring in. So I can say I want to scrub that particular value out. And it's going to say, we're good and we're scrubbing it out. Now, if I wanted to roll down a global uh, code type from the activity codes, I can actually tell P6 Loader or P6 Scrubber that I want to do that. So let's say I have mitigations, but those mitigations aren't the same. What I can choose to do is check mark this and have mitigations roll down to my project level, and it's going to assign it the project ID where it is actually being used. So in this case, I only have one project in this XCR, so it's going to go to that one project. If I had two in here and only one of those projects required mitigations or had mitigations defined, it would only roll it down to the one that it was defined in. So it's going to only go to the project where it is actually pertinent. I also have the ability, let me just close down this dictionary really quickly. I have the ability to remap again. I can say I want to scrub this out. I could, if I cared whether I had project activity IDs coming in or activity codes coming in, I could certainly say I want to scrub those. But if they're at the activity level, they're not really going to pollute my database. It's only going to be associated with that particular code or that project. On my UDFs, you can see that we do have the different activity level type of UDFs so that you can deal with those each individually. Again, I can decide whether I want to scrub them. I can decide whether I want to remap them. With resources, again, I have codes and UDFs. They work the same way. However, I have the ability on resources to remap a resource. So let's say, for instance, this is brought in my entire all of my resources that are involved with my XCR, and you can see that I've got several pages of them down here. But I want to change. I have this ID in here, but it's not the ID that I want this particular XCR to use for its resources. So I want to change this to actually be remapped to something that I can use. Not only am I going to remap it, but I only want to keep the highest level of engineering. So I'm going to make this engineering civil instead of making it more granular. I want it to be more high level. So I can go ahead and match all these and rename them. And then this last one, again, I want it to make sure that these are all the same. So all I want is to look at that resource at a high level. I really don't need that granularity when I import this in. However, they did have it in their XCR. Now this is going to take these three and remap them and combine them into this ENG CI resource. Now I can do the same thing with my roles. So let's say I don't want these to be the EAI ones to be EAI. What I want those to be is CR for scrub. And then, of course, I have this that's going to be different. I can go into my next EAI, look up that I have my scrub, and then I can do the same thing here. So all of these, oh, it looks like I chose the wrong one. Whoops, this needed to be EEI. So, and I needed to go to do the EAI. And then I am ready. I can remap those. I can make them actually go into these other, these SCR roles. So I can do that with roles also. Now, in my resources, you have material roles that come in if you're using those material or resources. And they come in with units of measure. Now, I don't want to necessarily create a bunch of new units of measure in my database. So I can see that I already have linear feet and I have or lineal feet as well as an each. However, on my M3, that does not exist in my database. So what I might want to do is come out here and see what I do have defined. So it is actually called M3 and it does have a different name and it's called cubic meters. So now I'm not going to add in a bunch of additional units of measure. I can actually map this and have it bring in what I already have defined. Another piece that we can deal with an XCR is calendars. Now, nothing's worse than bringing in and or importing an XCR and it having a global calendar that is not the same as the global calendar that I have named the same thing. Basically, it's going to come in, it's going to overwrite it, and it's really going to cause a headache. So, if you choose to roll them down, you can certainly roll down your calendars. And this is going to actually roll them down to the project level. So, it's going to maintain that calendar. However, it's not going to change anything you have existing, nor is it going to create anything that you don't really want there. So, I'm just going to go ahead and roll down all of my calendars to the project level so I don't pollute my data that I already have in my database. Now, if I use this definition on um, other XCRs um, that are essentially the same thing, and I'm using this scrubbing definition, I can tell it again, I want to scrub anything extra that comes in. So if I have another project that's coming or another calendar that's coming in, I can make sure that it's not going to come in as a global calendar also. We've also provided what project calendars are already exist within your project in that XCR. Now, if, for instance, let's say I wanted to roll down one of my say I have that 6-day calendar and that 7-day calendar that I have that I'm actually rolling down. Well, I know that they're the same. So what I can actually do is take this and copy it and say, well, let me go back to make sure I go to my goables. And I have that calendar that I can actually go in here. Oops, I did a 7-day. And then this one is the 6-day for, but they are the same calendar. And I want to assign them the same. So now, not only is it going to roll down this calendar, but it's actually going to combine it and reassign whatever is assigned to that project calendar that had already existed. The last piece is resource calendars. If you have a resource calendar coming in and you don't necessarily want to create a brand new resource calendar, or you know that you already have a resource calendar that is the same, what you can do is you can actually go in and let's say I actually just want to go this 5-day resource. I can remap that also and make it a different resource calendar, give it a different name. So those are the ways that you can handle both the global and the resource calendars in there. For project, that is informational only. So you can see what is actually already existing at the project level. Now, the last piece that you can deal with is cost accounts. Let's say you have a cost structure that you want to use. You can have that defined out there. When you have your XCR come in, you can verify that the cost accounts that they are using are actually matching what you already have set out there. Again, you have that ability to say you want to remove any additional cost accounts that are not already defined, or you can allow new ones to come in. Now, I have this defined. I have a definition here. How do I use it? How do I keep it so that I can reuse it later on? All I have to do is go down to this save and load definitions. Now, when I save and load definitions, I can see that I already have some definitions that are out here. Now, I want to create a new definition. So I would put new definition. Oh, sorry. I don't want to discard my pending page. I actually want to save as, excuse me. I want to save this definition, and it's going to say
I,
what
I
name.
could, I was freaking out there, Sue.
I know, me too. I didn't want to ruin everything that I had just gone through there. So I want to save this definition. Yay. So I want to name this, we're going to just say the demo example. If I wanted to put notes on that, I could describe what is defined in there. Maybe I want to say, what project it's for. This is the contractor it's for, whatever. Whatever notes I want to put in there. Those are going to show up when in my scrubber definition area.
Yeah, the date that you
The date,
last
yeah.
updated
So
it might be a
exactly.
good
So
one.
let's actually do that. Let's put in April 20th. 2021. So that might be the last date that it's updated. Then I can apply, and it's going to tell me that it was saved successfully. I can tell that it was saved successfully because I now see my name up here in the upper right. So this is what definition is actually applied or open in my scrubber right now. And then if I go back and look at my definitions, I can now see that I have my note that I can see there too. So let's say, now I'm going to say new definitions because that's going to clear out everything that I have right now. So let's say I come in and I've just come into my P6 scrubber and I don't need to define something. I already have it defined and I just want to scrub an XCR. What I can do is go down to my save and load. I can select the definition that I want to load and that I want to use to scrub, load that. It's going to tell me up in the corner that that definition is now loaded. And then I can go and I can scrub my file or files, as the case may be. So it's going to allow me to choose what file or files I want to scrub. So in this case, I'm actually going to select two different XCRs. And it's going to just go out, it's going to grab both of those, it's going to process them one at a time. But I don't have to keep going back and forth. I can actually say I want to open those. It's going to line them up over here. And then I can say I want to process that. It'll do them one at a time. And when the results come up, I will have some tabs to know that, or some buttons, I guess, that are going to show me that it's finished. I have some very high level details here. It's just going to tell me what definition I used, what the report was generated and what the date was, what the source file was that I scrubbed, etc. Then what I can do is I can now go view the report that was produced when this definition was applied to this XCR. When I click that, it's going to open up an HTML report. And this report is going to tell me everything that P6-Scrubber did or didn't do or validated. So I have basic information up at the top. This is summary information. Now you can see that I have my activity ID and my activity name that are blank. That means I didn't have those enabled. So it will just give you a blank if you don't have it enabled. Otherwise, it's going to give you what happened. As you scroll down, it's going to give you more granular information about the scrub. So I can see here that I had my project ID. It matched my sequence that I had put out there, my pattern, and so it's clean. As I scroll down, I can see that I had some things that were changed or that were dealt with in my project code types and my dictionary. So as I scroll down, the gray tables are telling me what my definition was, how that was set up. And then I get down to these color greenish, I guess, tables, and these are my results. So I can see that my client code type was scrubbed. I can see that my client type code type was scrubbed. I had my district that came in, And it was actually, I had a dictionary change on it, as well as my type of schedule was remapped to schedule status. And I also had a new dictionary value come in. Then it's going to come down and it's going to break down my dictionary. I had this value dist5 that came in. It was remapped to D5. And then I have my schedule status dictionary. Now, because I renamed this or I remapped my code itself, it's just saying that I had a new code value that came in and that code value was added. And so it's going to give you a blow by blow of everything that happened when this definition was applied. Now, if I'm not satisfied, I can close this out. I can go back into the definition, tweak whatever I need to, resave it, and rerun it. In my case, it's done what I want it to do. So I can go ahead and close this down, and then I can download my results. So when I download my results, let me just go and put this into a place where I actually want it to go. I can open this up and I can see that I have two files that are produced by P6-Scrubber. Now, the one file is my clean XCR, my XCR with all of those changes in it. My second file is a copy of that report that we just looked at. So if you wanted to provide feedback to whomever gave you the XCR as to what things you're looking for, things like that, you could certainly share um, that report with them. You could even share just a part of the report. You could copy and paste it and just share a part of the report. But it allows you to actually have it out there and have it available outside of Scrubber. So then I would extract those and I would import into P6. Now I'm going to go into P6 now, and we're going to take a look at what it looks like once a scrubbed file is imported in. Now, I've already imported it because it takes a little bit of time, and I don't want us to just sit and wait for this to import. So I have imported it in, and you can see how it differs from the other projects that have not been scrubbed. It actually has some indicators that are telling me what P6-Scrubber came across. So I can tell by the green here that my project ID was great. It was fine. Nothing was wrong with it. Um, but then I have an indicator telling me that I had project code types that were either changed or there was an issue with it, as well as my dictionary. And then if I look at my project codes, I have my district that I decided to keep, but remember I remapped that. So it is indeed D5 now. And then it's saying that that district code was fine, and here is my value for it. It'll also give you those indicators for your UDFs, as well as in the activities area. If I click on over to activities, it's going to tell me by activity how this was handled. So I can see that I've got some work types that are, or actually, I guess my vendor first. My vendors were clean, as well as my work type. I had some that were clean, and I have some that it's warning me there's no value here. So you might want to take a look at this. Now, on my discipline that I rolled down, it's actually telling me this was rolled down and this is I hate when it does that. This is the value that came in, but it is now a project value and it created it. So it's giving me that feedback, telling me that. It also will tell you about your UDFs as well as your cost accounts. So my cost accounts I didn't have anything that was wrong in that. Now, another thing that comes in or that you can choose to come in with your file, with your XCR, is a notebook that contains the report that we looked at. So you can also keep that report with your scrubbed file so you can tell what has happened with it. Now, the idea is to keep your database clean. If you decide that you don't want to add these indicators or you don't want to bring in this notebook, you do have the ability to suppress that when you create the file. So I'm going to go back to the scrubber really quickly and show you where that's at. That's up in this general piece here. By default, these are turned on. If you decide you don't want that notebook to come in, you can turn it off. And if you decide you don't want those indicators, you can turn off those indicators also. So we do give you that option to not bring those in. However, it is very helpful to see kind of what happened when Scrubber was run on those particular XCRs. Now, the last thing I want to show you are my roles and resources and how those were remapped. So I'm going to open up both my original file with my resources in it, as well as the one that was scrubbed. Obviously, I wouldn't have done this in my own database, but I wanted you to be able to see how it comes in and how it is different. So I'm just going to apply a different layout here. And we're going to take a look at the rules and resources. So our resources, I can see that I had those more lower level civil engineering resources, but I wanted to make them more high level. I was only worried about civil engineering and not the granularity of drafting and the lead engineer. And it is telling me and giving me a indicator saying that these were changed. Same goes with my roles. I had my previous ones, they have been changed, and now they are showing me that they have been remapped with my SCR ones. So with that, as long as I'm here, are there any questions while I'm still live in the system that maybe you didn't see or that you have a question about? Okay, if you do have questions that come up as Nicole is wrapping things up, please feel free to put them either in the chat or actually,
So,
yeah, just put them in the chat. Go ahead,
so,
Nicole.
so
Yes.
do you want to show them copying and pasting of a dictionary?
Oh, sure, I
I
can
know
do that.
we usually show that, so
Yep. Okay. Yep. That's something that I did not show.
yeah.
So let's
You
say
kind of mentioned it, you just
I
didn't
did.
show it.
I did. You're right. So if I'm coming in here and let's say I have my activity codes. Now, when I put my vendor in here, I can see that I have a handful here. Now, if I were making this from scratch and I wanted to be sure that every value I had was available, what I could do is I can actually copy and paste from my P6. So that's this bulk edit here. And when I open that up, it gives me what's already defined. Okay. So what I can do, and this is kind of a backwards way of doing it. I could actually let me just delete these out so that I can re-add them. I don't necessarily need to, but um, it's going to look a lot better and make more sense, I think, if I don't have these actually populated here. So let's say I was building this from scratch and I wanted to bring in my values. I could go into my P6 and I could go to my activity codes and I could say I want to go to my vendor and I want to see all of my activity codes or all my values for that vendor. Then what I could do is I could take all of these values and I can highlight them. I can say I want to copy them over and then I can go into P6-Scrubber and I can simply paste them. Now I don't need that color column in there, so I can choose to take that out. And if I perhaps didn't have the header row come in for whatever reason, I can actually say whether or not I want to remove that first row, whether that's a header or not. And then I can apply it and have my values come into as with a copy and paste. So that's the copy and paste, the bulk edit on those.
Yeah, so that it sort of depends on your requirement, your approach. If you
Right.
want to preempt and build from your database a standard definition, this could be one approach rather than waiting and hooking them up as they come in. Okay, so that really depends on your your strategy and what you're doing with the XCR and why you're cleaning it up. So if, as Sue mentioned, she showed you the new version, which is hooked up with P6. We also have a standalone. So for those schedulers who work with many, many clients and they want to be able to have a definition out in the cloud, for example, we also have that approach. So, okay, good. Did you explain that, Star? I might have missed it.
Yeah, that was the
Okay,
star is just your acknowledgement that
okay.
you are saying that this is okay. That I do want to I do realize that that I'm rolling this down and it doesn't exist already.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, good. Okay, good. So certainly if you have any other questions, throw them in the question room and we will try and address them. But hopefully you saw that the tool's pretty easy, works well, lots of feedback. I think the other, in one of our other webinars, one fellow was worried about if you have a claim, how can you stand on uh, the fact that you didn't change the schedule? And that's partly why we have those, all those reports in that feedback loop, which, you have, and you can definitely get them to acknowledge that the schedule's still the same, even though you might have modified swapped out some codes and things like that. So that was one question we got in another webinar, and that was important for us. We do have, that's what I did for the first 5 years after engineering school, worked on claims exclusively. So we have a lot of claims experience. So that was very important when we were building the tool, that we were able to explain what was changed and make sure the feedback was there. Okay, so let's run through some of the client feedback and what benefits that we've found over the many years that we've used this tool. So this tool we originally created in more of a file format, drop the file in, have some pre-canned definitions, which worked, but in the last few years we started to build it out as more of a user interface. So really what prompted this is we work with a lot of large oil and gas companies or a lot of large owner clients with lots of engineering and contractor type XCRs coming to them. And we wanted to be able to give feedback on the schedule very quickly. Okay, so this kind of ties in with our P6QA tool. If you're not familiar with that one, it would be a good one to attend an upcoming webinar as well, with the idea of giving the feedback on the quality of the schedule. But in this case, we're giving that feedback on whether the schedule is matching the requirements very quickly. And the other thing is whether or not you're a P6 expert. So the easy use was very important. Make it very configurable so that you could see, someone could kind of set it up, deploy it to the team, and they could quickly critique a schedule again for whether it's matching the contract specifications and the requirements. And keep anything that doesn't belong in your database out. Okay, so that's always fun when you're working with many different engineering companies, many contractors who use P6 for many different clients, and you don't want any of the extra data coming in. So some of you noted when I threw the poll up that you spend quite a few hours each month doing this. So the whole objective here is to avoid that. Make the effort to keep your P6 clean, keep your reports that you're giving to management through dashboards, through reports and whatnot. Make sure they don't get mucked up and lose their accuracy because something got overwritten or lost. So those were really important pieces, and that's the feedback that we've received, that this is much more reliable, and of course, you save a lot of time not having to deal with that on each import. As I mentioned at the beginning, some of our clients import quite a few projects when they're on a weekly or bi-week or every second week update cycle. And one of our clients, I'm pretty sure it's in the range of 50 to 100 schedules that they're importing every 2 weeks. So huge time savings there. So those were the objectives, and I think we've hit the mark. And with this latest version, it's even more beneficial because we've got those ties right to the P6 database. So you can run it either way. And some upcoming items that we're exploring is to allow people just to drag and drop the XCR into a pre-canned definition and have it do some of the importing automatically. So those are things we're exploring as well to get it even more automated. Okay. There's a question in here, so let me just try and tackle it. Okay, it appears that your bolt-on application is geared towards analyzing historical data for claims. I wouldn't say that, not really. We're not really analyzing data. If you're interested in something like that, our P6QA is a little bit more along those lines. It's really designed to ensure that when you import XCRs from contractors, engineering companies, vendors, your job site perhaps, that you don't bring in any data that you don't want in, or that you bring in duplicates or triplicates, and that's often a problem we end up with. So if you wanted to run a vendor report, but your vendor is called ABC or ABCD, and it's really the same vendor, it becomes very difficult to run any cross-project reporting, for example. So the idea is meant to make sure that the data you're bringing in stays clean. Things like calendars. You don't want your calendar to get overwritten with another calendar by mistake, which could change even your schedule dates. Okay, so it's really meant to make sure we keep our database tidy, clean, uncorrupted, as we call it, unpolluted as well. Okay, well, so thanks for joining us. And certainly if you have any other questions, throw them in and we'll try and get to them. So hopefully some of you know a bit about our background. I keep having to tell everyone we've been working with P6 as Emerald for 26 years and even longer. And our whole objective at the beginning when we started Emerald was to make scheduling easier, better, make our project controls teams' life easier and better. So we've always had this slant towards the technology, towards integration, and this is kind of where all our tools that we've built out in the last few years are coming from. It's to try and make your life better, make using all the pre-run tools much easier to deal with, and of course do away with all this extra data management cleanup that we have to deal with. So hopefully you saw something interesting in this webinar. We've got some more coming up. So this was our P6-Scrubber month. April was our P6-Scrubber month, and May is going to be our CAPS month. And certainly you're welcome to join some of those upcoming webinars that we have. So we'll stay on for another minute or two. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in. And feel free to reach out if the questions don't come to you right now, that's fine. Feel free to reach out to Sue, and Donna is also on, and they can help address any additional questions or things that you might want to find out more about on this XCR cleaner P6 scrubber. Okay, well, it looks like no one's coming up with any additional questions at the moment, so we're gonna close out for now. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.